Good afternoon and welcome to Premier Live Signings. Our guest this afternoon is Mr. Chris Paul, talking about his brand new book, 61, available everywhere, and of course, certainly with premiercollectibles.com/Chris Paul for a signed copy. Chris, this is really quite an extraordinary book. Before we get into that, I just want to let everybody know probably some facts they already know about you, but if not, Chris is a 12-time NBA All-Star, a 4-time NBA first-team selection, 7-time All-NBA defensive team selection, and 7-time leader in steals and 4-time leader in assists. He is also the only player in NBA history to score over 20,000 points and have 11,000 plus assists in his career. He was the fourth pick of the 2005 NBA draft, and his career has spanned great stops in Los Angeles, where he helped the Clippers to their first ever Pacific Division championship, to his time with the Houston Rockets and a record number of wins for a season by the Rockets, and also has helped lead the Phoenix Suns to their first Western Conference championship in 28 years. On top of that, he didn't take a couple of summers off because he helped the United States win Olympic gold medals in 2008 in Beijing and 2012 in London. He is also one of only 75 people selected to the NBA's all 75th anniversary team as one of the all-time greats in league history. He's a respected entrepreneur. He's teamed up with Turner Impact Capital to raise awareness for the importance of affordable housing for working class families. And his production company, O-Dip Productions, has created tremendous content, including an Emmy-nominated ESPN sports documentary, Crossroads. Well, we have a lot to talk about. We want to get into the book today, both some questions we have as well as some terrific questions in our private chat. So, Chris, why did you feel this was the time right now that was best for you to write this book?
Yes. So first of all, thanks for having me. I really appreciate this. For me, I thought the time was now because this story sort of occurred when I was 17. That was when my grandfather was murdered. And now at 38, I have a total different perspective if I would have tried to write this too soon, maybe right after, or even 5 years ago, because I have kids of my own now, and I think about the relationship that I had with my grandfather, and I watch my kids and their relationship with my parents and with my wife's parents. And it's just a relationship that is so unique. It's so unique. A lot of us, if you're blessed and fortunate enough to have parents, especially both parents, that relationship with your grandparents is so different.
Tell us a little about Papa Chili.
Right. So my grandfather, Papa Chili, he had the first Black-owned service station in North Carolina. And so that's where I would be during the summers. I'd be working. I was a little young kid, and I would have a red rag just like my grandfather in my pocket, just so I could be like him. I used to get to work and just go rub my hand across some oil and rub it on my arm just so I could sort of look and feel like Papa. But he taught us the importance of doing the work, right? And not somebody else doing the work. And that's what I was grateful for, because if we wanted some shoes or we wanted anything, even though he had a wad of money in his front pocket, he wouldn't just give it to us. He would say, okay, you want these shoes? I need you to come work here at the service station for a week. So
he gave you a real important lesson about how work is where you get. You just don't expect something handed to you.
Exactly. And, when you're a kid, you get so mad. You're like, man, you got the money right there. Just give it to me. Just Papa, it's me. Just give it to me. And it wasn't until I got older, and even when I lost them, that I really appreciated the fact that it's the work. It makes it feel so much better when you know that you worked for it. It makes you appreciate what you have.
He instilled an earning quality in you, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, obviously he was a bedrock for your family, and as your parents were as well to you. What was he for the community?
Oh, man.
And not just the African-American community, really the community as a whole.
Yeah, he was just such somewhat of a polarizing figure, right? And he did his work, and he just sort of stayed out the way. But I think because he had done it for so long, right? You think about people who have the same job for so long, there's something to be said about the consistency of it. And he just, I mean, it would be people that came by my granddad's service station sometimes that wouldn't have the money to get their tires changed. And they'd be like, Mr. Jones, I ain't got it today. Can I just come back? Can I pay you when, I get paid or whatnot? And he'd be like, okay. Papa, I'd be like, cool. Now, some of these people would do it, come back and pay him, but some of them wouldn't. But I mean, I talk about it in the book. It was this group of men called the Jones Disciples who just came by my granddad's service station, and they sat there and just talked about everything under the sun. And I think they just realized how the service station and my grandfather was just a safe space.
It sounds like he really instilled respect for everybody so that they didn't have to feel bad if times were tough for them.
Exactly. It was a respect for everyone, but it was also that sense of community.
Mhm.
As we talk about it, and I'm thinking about it right now, I'm sure that has to do with me and why I am the way I am. And I talk about so many different things in the book, but that sense of community, and I've just always been, for a long time, I hate to be alone. I think some of that may come from, just being at the service station. A lot of these guys would come just sit and hang out at the service station. They wasn't getting their car worked on. They just came up there so that they could sit and talk about sports, about current events, speak about life, and just, it's that community aspect.
Right. And then an unfortunate tragedy happened, a horrible tragedy, in November of 2002. This happened within 24 hours after probably one of the happiest moments of your life when you signed on your letter of intent to go to Wake Forest. And then the tragedy of your grandfather's murder. And 6 days later, you're playing your first game of the season of your senior year in high school. That is quite a whirlwind over less than a week period for a young man. What was going through you at that time? Besides obviously grief, but what else was driving you through that time?
Yeah, sometimes it's a blur, but if you ask what was driving me, it was for sure, the spirit and the emotion of my grandfather. Some of those shots that I shot in that game, I gotta believe he was sitting up there watching, tipping them in. And for him to be murdered in the way that he was, that was tough to deal with, right? Because I was just with him the night before, November 14th, and he was taken away from us on November 15th. And the 19th was his funeral, which was, a very emotional day also. So that very next day on the 20th is when I was able to score 61 points. And, my career high before that was 34. It was 34. So the jump from 34 to 61 obviously shows that it had to be an out-of-body experience, which, I know my granddad's fingerprints was all over that.
And right after that game, it had to be an incredibly emotional experience for your family and you at the game. Tell us what that was like.
Yeah, at the game, my personality is when I'm dealing with something and something's really tough or I'm upset, I get really quiet, right? I get really quiet. I think that's because I like to get really honed in and focused in on my thoughts and try not to show people that hurt and anger and that anguish too much. So at the game, I wasn't really talking to anybody. Everybody, pat you on the back. They be like, yo, you all right? You all right? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Even though deep down inside, I probably wasn't, but as the game started going on, what kept me going is I would glance up and look in the stands. And my mom used to sit at the very top of the stands so that she could have her back up against the wall. And I saw a lot of my cousins and friends and family there, and they had no clue what my plan was to score 61. So when I seen them up there, as the game went on and on and on, I just kept saying, yep, I got to do this.
So with your grandfather being gone and reflecting on, just the myriad number of lessons he taught you, what would you say, if you could put your finger on just one in particular of the many, what is the number one lesson he gave you that has molded you into the man you are today? Not just the 17-year-old Chris Paul, but the gentleman now of 38.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know what? What my grandfather taught me more than anything, it wouldn't be a between the legs dribble, a behind the back pass, or even a mid-range floater. It would be the importance of family. the value of family. I say this all the time. If it's one thing that my grandfather would be proud of, it wouldn't be, you know, an amount of money. It wouldn't be an achievement. It wouldn't be the NBA. I think he would be most proud that our family is still intact, you know, and we're still, you know, the same as far as the love that we show and the care that we give for one another.
And family is crucial too, and it comes throughout the entire book. How you talk about faith and family, and all sides of your family. It seems to be a very deep and rich bond that you all have together in the Paul family. Is that true?
Oh, it's very true. It's very true. You know, it's funny. I've been doing all these different talks and this show here and that show there. It's the first person that asked me that question. You're the first one to ask me that question. And I think it's so unique because I just finished my 18th season in the NBA. My parents still live in North Carolina, right, where I was born and raised. My parents still make more than half of my games every season, you know? And so you could say, you know, after all these years, my parents could be like, man, we know that boy good. He fine. You know, we'll do our own thing. Not my folks. And that's just always been my normal, right? That's always been my normal. My parents have always been there.
Yeah. Speaking of people who've also done so much to mold you and what you took from them, you've had a lot of great coaches in your career. You have. What do they mean to you as a player and as a young man? And what do they mean to you now looking back on every one of those coaches down through the years?
Man, some real good questions because you make me think because I've really been blessed with some great coaches. I actually talked to my last coach, my last former coach, Monty Williams, last night. And that's a relationship that'll be a bond for life. You know, sports have taught me everything that I need to know about life. Seriously, sport has taught me heartache. It's taught me sacrifice. It's taught me joy. You know, it's taught me all of these different things. And so my coach used to always say, Monty Williams, he used to always say, reps remove doubt, right? So that means like, you know, if you doubt in yourself on can you do it, the more reps that you get, the more that you do it, that'll remove that doubt. My college coach, Skip Prosser, he used to always say, never delay gratitude. Never delay gratitude. He would also say, if you can't be on time, be early, right? It's all these different things, man, and they stick with you. They stick with you, and I'm so grateful for that.
I wanted to just for a second talk a little further about Coach Prosser. And again, another young man taken way too early. Very sad passing. What if you could go back and talk to Coach Prosser now? What kind of a conversation do you think you two would have?
Man, first and foremost, I would tell Coach that I'm 9-time first team all defense, right? That'd be the first thing I told him because Coach used to come see me play when I was in high school. And the first thing he'd say after my game, I might have dropped 40 points and he'd be like, you gonna play any defense? Are you gonna play any defense? So that'd probably be the first thing I say. It'd be like, Coach, check me out. Check me out. I play defense. But the biggest thing I'd probably tell Coach if I could see him is I would say thank you and hug him so tight because Coach gave me an unexpected love, but in a unique way, right? I was a top player coming out of high school, going to a college. You know, you think that the college coach is going to be telling you the best thing since pants with pockets, but that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. You know, Coach was on me all the time about turning the ball over, do this harder, do this better. And it was tough love. And I realized that, and it was so tough to lose him.
I was have to get you toughened up for those Tobacco Road battles, that's for sure.
Yeah, Tobacco
I want
Road.
to talk real quick also about another coach. You never played for this man, but he had a huge influence in your area. He had a huge influence on the game and certainly a huge influence on historically Black colleges and universities. That's Clarence Big House Gaines. Yeah. What do you remember most about Coach Gaines?
Man, what do I remember most about Big House? Well, being a kid, right? There's certain things that you remember because in my hometown, Big House was bigger than life, right? So I remember when I would be headed to church, my church, Dreamland Park, sat back here like on Delabrook Street. but you had to pass this other church to get to my church. That's the South for you. It's a church like on every corner, right? Yeah. So on the way to my church, you would pass this church. I think it was called St. Paul. I don't know why I remember all this stuff, but every now and then I would see Big House getting out of his car or getting into his car, and it used to be the funnest thing, right? And then every now and then I would catch him up at my granddad's service station.
There was one thing I wanted to talk to you about from your nearly decade-long running the National Basketball Association Players Association.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that a lot of people may not know because they just think, well, you're a pro athlete, everything's just easy peasy. But you really worked very hard for landmark legislation to help get health insurance for retired players. What was that battle like to get that done?
Man, those years as president of the PA were some amazing years and complete years of service. And, you know, you basically get a business class on steroids with all the different conversations and things that you're working on, you know, for a long period of time. But I would definitely say that's the thing that I'm most proud of as my time with the union, because we're the only sports league, right? How crazy is that? We're the only sports league that has health insurance for retired players.
Well, certainly a feather in your cap. I mean, that's really extraordinary. It's extraordinary that that is the only league that does so, but it's also extraordinary that, you know, you went up against forces that might have pushed back on that and you got it done for these players. What was the outpouring from a lot of the former players after it came through?
Man, it was amazing and still is amazing. And you know, the one thing that I always tell all the players, I say the one thing that we all have in common, right, is that at some point we will all be retired players. That's the one thing that we all have in common. So it's kind of surreal even now. I would be working out like before a game in a city. I never forget playing a preseason or playing a game in Dallas, and we're doing warm-ups. And a former player came up to me and he stopped me during warm-ups, which, you know, it's pretty serious if you talking to a guy or messing with him during warm-ups. And he stopped me and he said, "Hey man, I just want to say thank you." Right? So I could name 10 or 15 of those occurrences where guys just say thank you because they appreciate it. And that was all, you know, the current players doing because we had to vote on it and make sure everybody was okay with it.
Right. Father's Day's just passed. Obviously, it was, I'm sure, a lovely weekend for you with your large family and all that. What are the joys of being a parent for you?
Man, there's no love greater, right? There's no joy greater than the look in my kids' eyes and to see how fast they grow and how quick they change. My son's 14 now, my daughter's 10. When you have kids, you just sort of always say, oh, this age is the best age. Oh, I just love them right now. You know, they 3 and 4 years old. You're like, oh, this is the best age. I hope they'll never change. Then they get a little older and you say, oh, this is the best age. And I think that's just been the case is having someone who you love unconditionally, no matter what. I've had a few teammates who have had kids for the first time recently. And the thing that I always tell them is I say, you know, your significant other, whoever that may be, I'm sure you tell each other, you know, that, you know, I need you. Like, I can't live without you. Like I said, no offense, but he or she actually can live without you, right? but that doesn't mean they don't love you. But I tell you one thing, this little kid that you just brought into the world, it's nothing like looking at him like there's nothing that child can do without you. And so it matters. And when you understand that type of love and sacrifice, none like it.
Yeah. What are your concerns, though, today, in today's world, as a parent, with your kids now? You know, your son's 14 and your daughter's just turned 10. You know, they're starting to get ready to spread their wings a little bit more and more as the years go by. What are your concerns though as a parent in our society today?
The biggest thing that I worry about with kids today, especially my own kids, like they don't have social media or whatnot, but I worry about their mental. And I mean
Mhm.
that. And that's not just because it's trendy to say, it's real. Like I worry about their mental health, which is why me and my wife were constantly
Mhm.
checking their devices, checking their phones to find out what's really going on with them.
Yeah. I
Because,
think you mentioned recently, Chris, that your daughter had, as kids always do, had a rather unpleasant experience at school.
yeah, she definitely did, where kids were picking on her, calling her CP0 and all this different type stuff, or saying that I'm never going to win a championship. And my daughter's very emotional, and she has the right to be emotional. I think it's just a learning experience all the
Mhm.
time. And like I told her, I said, listen, baby, I said, some people do and some people talk. I said, we're going to be the people that do. We're just going to keep doing the work. But the thing that I worry about the most for the kids are um, like social media and things like that, or just the phones, because I always draw this analogy. When we were growing up, if we went to school and someone didn't like us, right? Like if you liked a girl and she didn't like you back, you didn't have to deal with that again until you got back to school, right? If it was on a Friday, you wouldn't have to deal with it again until Monday. But because these kids have so many group chats and all these things going on, they're having to deal with it the rest of the day on Friday. They having to deal with it Saturday, Sunday. And so it's too much for them to handle.
Yeah, it is. It's brain overload for a lot of these kids today, and I think you're right. It's a major tragedy in our society with this with that kind of pressure on kids. You talked about in the book a couple of very difficult moments that I think a lot of parents have, and certainly parents in the African American community have to have. Number one is, of course, explaining to your children about the whole George Floyd situation. And number two is the talk that many Black parents have to have, for want of a better way of saying it, the driving while Black talk. Can you take us through that, what those discussions have been like, if you don't mind?
Yeah, me and my wife made a conscious decision to inform our kids on the real, like what's really happening in life. And so when the situation happened with George Floyd, you know, we showed them to a certain extent the video and we talked about what was happening with them. And they both took it hard, but my daughter took it really hard because she
Mhm.
thought that the video meant that that was going to happen to my son. you know, Fast forward a couple months, me and my little cousin in LA, and we're driving out to see this office building, and we get pulled over. And when we get pulled over, I'm nervous. I'm nervous. I was probably so nervous that I was on the 405. I pulled over to the left when I think I actually should have pulled over to the right. And as the officer is walking up to the car, I'm letting the officer know as loud as I can, look, my hands are right here. When he gets to the car, I tell him I'm going to reach over, into the glove compartment. And because I was being so extra, he got upset. He got mad. He was like, why are you doing all that? That's not necessary. Well, sir, I don't know that. And I say that because when we leave the arena, we don't leave in our warm-ups or all of our team gear. As soon as I step foot outside that arena, I'm just another Black man in Los Angeles, just like everybody else.
Can you discuss for us, because I know it's another big part of the book, because let's be honest, you are a very busy man. What is the balancing act for you between, and it's nonstop, it seems, between world class athlete, busy entrepreneur, activist, philanthropist, husband, father? I mean, how do you get it all done in 24 hours?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm still trying to figure that out if you're gonna help me. No, what you learn is everyone always talks about time management and how to
Mhm.
find balance. But the more I think about it and I hear about it, like there's really no such thing as balance.
Mhm.
You just pour into which bucket you need more out of that day. That's the only way it can work, because everything is not gonna get the same amount of attention. On game day, it may be a little bit different
Yeah,
as far as who gets the most time, but you have to be okay with that.
yeah, yeah. You are a parent to two wonderful young kids, but in a lot of ways, I think, not to age you any, but you're also a parent to a lot of the young guys on your team and in the league. What is that like being a veteran voice of reason uh, to the young kids coming into the league, whether they're on your team or not, just in general?
Yeah, I do that for a lot of guys in the league, not just my team, but I think it's a conscious choice to help, right? To
Mhm.
help. And that's all I try to do is, I have a basketball camp every summer where I'm showing all the kids how to steal the ball like me, how to make these reads. I don't keep and make this stuff a secret. I don't, because I want to see guys win. That is my ultimate goal. I want to see guys win. I want to see guys be successful. And if there's anything that happened in my journey that may be able to help them in their journey, then I'm all for it. And I got 12 kids that came through my AAU program who are in the NBA now. So if,
Wow,
if that's not a blessing, I don't know what is.
that's fantastic. I mean, that seems like just hearing you talk about it. It sounds like that's the kind of thing you're proud for team accomplishments and individual accomplishments as a player for the work you put in. But that sounds like something that means that much more to you because all these young guys have come up and now they are succeeding thanks to initially a lot of your guidance and direction.
It's so meaningful. I mean, you got to think, I got so many different examples. So Reggie Bullock, who was a shooting guard that
Mhm.
plays for the Dallas Mavericks, he was my very first kid that made it to the NBA, right? And he got drafted to the Clippers when I played for the Clippers. And then you got stories like Josh Okogie, who started this year on my team as my teammate. Um, he used to catch a Greyhound bus, right, from Atlanta and ride down to Winston-Salem to come to practice every weekend with our AAU team.
That's fantastic. I get that. We're going to go to the private chat now. We got some great questions in there from a lot of the people watching, and on top of that, there's also off to the side on my screen, Chris, just scores of responses from people listening in, and it is truly the Chris Paul love fest. I'm seeing lots of hearts, lots of smiles, and lots of great suggestions where you should be playing next. But we know
Uh-oh.
you have no say in that right now, at least not until next week. So we'll leave that one for now. But I can tell you it is an absolute love fest in the comments section. Let's see
Thank
what we
you.
have here with some great questions from our listeners. All right, Chris, we're going to start with a tough one.
Okay.
In 2011, the league blocked you from joining Kobe Bryant and the Lakers because of a practice that is now commonplace. Star player joining other star players on the same team. What are your thoughts on the decision, the policy change, and how it affected you? And do you feel you were perhaps robbed of a title run?
Um, well, to address it, like that was a surreal time. It was crazy. I remember the night like it was yesterday. Me and Kobe had got on the phone. We had talked about what this could be, that could be. But as you learn in this league, things happen, right? So I don't feel like I was robbed of a title run or anything like that. Obviously, I know who I am. I know who Kobe was. I feel like I know what we would have been. But unfortunately, that's where it stops. There's nothing more that I could do about the situation, but I always have, those what if thoughts and what that would have looked like.
Mm-hmm. If you could create a team of current players to play on, what would that team be?
Ah. Oh man, these questions are hilarious. They like little ways to ask questions. What team? First of all, I'd be the point guard, you know. Um, Man, let me see. Somebody on the wing like Book for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Probably want somebody out there like Giannis, you know. I don't know what position I want Giannis at though.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's easy to say the three, but I kind of like him at the 4 or 5. Um, I don't know. I definitely think Giannis would be on my team though, because he just plays hard and he
Right.
competes.
Here's another good question. As a seasoned NBA veteran, what is the best advice you could go back and give to your 21-year-old Chris Paul self?
Oh man, one of the biggest things would be to take my rehab more serious. Yeah, I tore my meniscus after my 4th year in the league, and I think because I was so young, I tried to come back way too fast, and Yeah, it just has always given me issues for a little bit. You know what I mean? So I think
Mhm.
that was the thing. I would probably take rehab a lot more serious.
Do you think that, since you came into the league, uh, that the advances in training and rehab for players and all that, has it improved greatly in your opinion?
It's improved tremendously. I wish you could almost come into an NBA locker room now and see all the different uh, gadgets and such. I mean, when I came into the NBA, if you hurt your ankle or if you did anything, they would just put ice and stem on it. That was
Mhm.
it. They hook you up to the stem machine, send those electrodes or whatever, put ice on it, and then wrap it up. But now, like in this league that we're in now, oh man, it's um, there's so much detail into making sure that the player has whatever it needs. And so a lot of these teams now actually have training tables, right? So you get to practice and there's 5, 6 chefs who are there like preparing meals and stuff. I mean, my first 6 years in the NBA in New Orleans, we didn't even have a chef. So it's definitely a new day.
Here's another question for us from Flagstaff, Arizona. What do you see yourself doing once you retire from the NBA? Would you still try to be involved in the game in some way, shape, or form?
Yes, I absolutely still want to be around the game. I would love, being the owner of a team. Um, and I think just I want to be around the game. The one thing I
Mhm.
know I won't do is I won't coach. As much as I love the game or not, I just love coaching my AAU team because the problem is I don't want to travel like the NBA no more when I finish playing. When I get done playing, it's gonna be time to, slow down just a little bit.
Well, here's another question for us. And it deals with Coach Prosser, but also Coach Dino Gaudio. The
Mm.
question is Dino Gaudio and Skip Prosser from my hometown in West Virginia, hometown area in West Virginia. What did you learn from these coaches? We've dealt with Coach Prosser to an extent. And what are some of the memories of your time together at Wake Forest with those coaches?
Man, Coach Gaudio. Coach Gaudio was amazing. Coach Prosser was amazing. Um, they were big, like Cincinnati fans, right? Like, and my Coach Skip Prosser, was a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. But Coach used to talk about Wheeling, West Virginia all the time, or then he would talk about you know, Elder. You ever heard? Well, you can't talk to him through the chat, but it was an Elder High School. There was a Saint X, but Coach always just appreciated anybody who was going to do the work.
Think. Do you feel that the coaches that come from real hard, not real hard scrabble, but hardworking, working class kind of backgrounds can relate better to players?
Yeah, I think coaches that come from hard work background, like they can relate to players, but I also think the number one thing sometimes that helps players relate to coaches is when the player is a former player,
Hmm.
right? Because a lot of times now they understand the hustle and the grind of what it looks like to challenge yourself or to be great. And it also, you know, doubles as, just a way to make sure you're taking care of yourself, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Hmm. We touched on this briefly, but here's another question all the way from Hamburg, Germany.
Wow.
Yes. How much impact does the love and faith of your family have on you when you're on the court? Is the performance, good or bad, sometimes triggered by family situations?
Man, that's a really good question. Nobody's asked that. So I'll tell you this. This is what's so interesting about that. I used to always be the person to be like, man, when I hoop, like ain't nothing ever gonna affect me, right? Nothing can affect me. But I tell you this, and this is where the NBA changed somewhere too. Oh man, this is a really good question. So at halftime of NBA games now, when you walk in the locker room, there's a lot of guys who have their phones out, right? At halftime. That is something that's new for me, right? That's new for me because for me, I've always said any and everything that's going on in the world, it can wait till after the game, right? And I always say that because if I pick up my phone at halftime, and this is just me, I might see a text from somebody that changes me emotionally. You know, it could change anything or trigger anything that I can wait till after the game
Yeah.
to check my phone. But like you said, my wife one game when I played for the Clippers all these years, I used to know where my wife was sitting every single game. You know, I could be in warm-ups or whatnot, and I can glance up. I knew my wife was going to be there. We had a medical scare with my daughter one time, and I never forget because I kept looking at my wife's seats and she wasn't there, right? And I kept looking and she wasn't there, and I couldn't function. I couldn't function. I had actually went back to the locker room and I like cried my eyes out because it was about halftime and my wife wasn't there yet because of the situation with my daughter. But that was when it showed me like that I don't care how much you love this game. I don't care how much you love this game. Like real life situations matter.
Exactly. Here's a very good question. We would all love the answer to this. Which NBA city has the best regional food specialty?
Okay. Be very
And
honest
feel
with
free
you.
to pick your 5 favorite foods.
5 favorite foods? Well, it's funny because the answer to me was going to be New Orleans, right? When I played in New Orleans, man, listen, if you Googled a picture of me now from like 2008 or something like that, 2009, and just look at my face and the fullness of it. So I went plant-based 4 years ago, completely changed my life. So I can't even eat the stuff that I used to eat in New Orleans all the time.
Here's a question from Australia.
Man.
If you could create a team of current players to play on, which one would it be? Careful, you're still figuring out where you're going to play next year.
Yeah, I know exactly. I'm trying to think. I don't know. It's a hard question. It's a hard question. I don't know. It's so many different guys that I appreciate playing against that playing with them. I don't know. It's a lot harder than it used to be. Like just knowing like you want to play with Dirk. You know, I knew I would always want to play with KG at some point. I wish I would have got a chance to play with, you know, a lot of different guys, especially a center who like was just like demanding, right? And when I say demanding, like I've always been the way I have been as far as like if somebody fouls me hard, I have to take care of myself. I've always wondered what it's like to like play with one of those bigs who, you know, basically just protect you no matter what's going on, if that makes sense.
That seems to be a position that's changed a lot in the game. There are no more, well, there are not as many guys like, you know, going back years ago to the Robert Parishes, the Artis Gilmores, the Kareem
Artis
Abdul-Jabbar.
Gilmore,
That kind of center
man.
position doesn't exist anymore, does it?
Man, listen, Artis Gilmore, it's funny you just said that. He came to my golf tournament when I had it in New Orleans some years ago. When I say that man got the most firm handshake I ever seen in life, and I don't think it's on purpose. Like he literally, his hands were so big and massive that when you say like, "Hey, Artis," you're like, "Oh, man, let go." It's almost like a prank when he like squeezed your hand because he squeezed so hard.
We have so many great questions that have come in, literally from all over the world. Chris, Sweden, of course, U.S., China, Australia has checked in.
Wow.
It's Germany, as we know. I mean, it's just been tons of questions that have come in.
Thank you.
And again, like I say, the comments section, which is different from the question page, even, it just goes on and on and on. First class on and off the court. I just wanted you to hear, you know, just so you can hear what the fans are saying, because you should know the effect you have.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And
It's just great. First
Yeah.
class on and off the court. Um, you're the best. Please stay. Please come here. And I won't list all the teams that said please come here, but there's many. So I mean, it's obviously you've worked so hard to get where you are that you have, I think, deserved this kind of respect and admiration because from where I'm standing and I'm watching your whole career back from your freshman year at Wake right through to now, you've always been not just a class act, but a guy who does it the right way. Do you feel like you have put in the kind of effort that you can look back at your career someday and go, you know what, no matter what happened, wins and losses, I can walk away knowing, and hopefully it's not for many more years, but I can walk away knowing, yep, I gave it my best.
That's interesting you say that because I think that's why I work the way that I do. You know, I've had a lot of heartache and a lot of failures in this league, but I keep coming back because I know how hard I'm working. And, you know, anytime you're in love with something like I am with this game, you're like, okay, that happened, but at some point, this is going to work out for me. This is going to work out for me. And that's the way I look at it. What I'll tell you about this book, too, is it was an emotional roller coaster sort of writing this book. You know, it's a lot of feelings that went in this book, a lot of emotions that went into this book. So I'm so excited and nervous and anxious at the same time. You know, when people come up and say that they read it, I immediately like get nervous, like, what did you think? But I tried to really, really like put my real thoughts and my heart into this so that people understand how important those relationships are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is clear on every page of this book. It is a marvelous read. I think you and Michael Wilbon have done just a marvelous job. It's so good. I mean, there's stories that I think when readers get their hands on it, and I just can't emphasize enough, premiercollectibles.com/Chris Paul for your autographed copy. They're going to find stories about you that they never really suspected because to many people, they just see Chris Paul playing ball, from October to June every year. They don't know the real man behind it. And I think this is going to be really eye-opening in so many wonderful ways for a lot of fans. We'll close in just a moment because you've been very gracious with your time. And I know you're very, very busy. If you could have one talk with your grandfather right now, what would it be?
Man, you're going to get me emotional thinking about that. That's such an easy answer for me. And the conversation that I would have with my grandfather, it would be, I would introduce him to my wife and I would introduce him to my kids. And I think that would make him so happy, but it would make me so happy because my kids, my wife, everybody knows how much he's always meant to me. You know, since my kids were young kids, they would see pictures in the house or they see this and that, and they'd be like, I'd be like, Chris, who is that? He'd be like, oh, that's Papa. That's Papa Chili. You know, so for them to know of him, but to never have gotten the opportunity to see him or hug him or meet him, no question about it. If I could have one conversation with him, it would be to talk to him about my wife and kids and to hopefully introduce him.
That sounds wonderful. That sounds wonderful. This is a marvelous book, everyone. Please do yourself a huge favor and get this book. Get this for the grandfather you love in your life. Get it for you because you will love reading and you will go back and read parts of this book over and over again. It isn't just a read once and up on the shelf. There are so many terrific lessons in here that you're going to want to pick this book out. When you're having a hard time, pick this book out because there's something for Papa Chili in there for all of us. And in our tough and crazy world that we live in, Chris, I think we probably all could use a little grandpa some days.
I know I can.
Thank you so very, very much. What an honor it's been to talk to you. Chris Paul, 61, life lessons from Papa, on court and off. available, premiercollectibles.com/Chris Paul for your signed copy. Chris, thanks again for your time. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You take care.
You too.
Hey, this is John Acuff, New York Times best-selling author of 7 books and someone who's done a live signing. If you like the one you just watched, make sure you check out our YouTube channel. It's full of amazing authors having great conversations and signing books for viewers just like you. So make sure you subscribe, and thanks for watching today.